Now, rural areas in South Africa continue to face telecom network disparities. The areas remain underserviced and face significant challenges in accessing reliable and affordable internet services. The digital divide makes it difficult for businesses to expand their services in some rural areas. According to an independent tower operator, Moropa Solutions, red tape, municipal challenges and administrative delays are holding the process back. The Department of Communications and Digital Technologies has extended the phase out of 2G and 3G devices to December 2027 to make way for faster 4G and 5G networks. However, many communities still lack network connectivity, leaving poorer areas without internet access, emergency communication or digital business capabilities. Moropa Solutions, an independent tower operator, says setting up network infrastructure is challenging and urges government departments to collaborate in prioritizing tower installation in rural areas to promote digital equality. Now, to talk more about this, we are now joined by Shipalana from Moropa Solutions. A very good evening to you, Sean. Thank you so much for your time. As we look at some of the big challenges, I mean, you've listed infrastructure limitations as one of those limitations, telecommunication services in Africa. How widespread is the problem?
Good evening, Paul, and to all the viewers. The problem is quite widespread. For anybody who drives through rural South Africa will experience this, sporadic signal coverage. Even if you're on the main national roads, there will be areas, especially if you travel through the Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, where the signal just disappears for some time. So the experience for rural users in general isn't as good as those in urban areas.
And let's talk a little bit more about the challenges. I mean, what kind of challenge does this limitation present for the community?
Well, communication is almost like a basic human right, and it leads and opens up to a lot of things that we take for granted in urban areas. You think about distance learning, especially, during the lockdown and COVID, where data was zero rated by the mobile operator so that learners could download material. But that doesn't help when there's no coverage in that area. You think about businesses that are trying to operate, especially in those areas where you have tourism. So if people cannot book accommodation in those areas, and that business suffers the consequences. Talk about public safety, so things like medical emergencies, some incursions or some of the crime realities that we experience in the country. So if there's no comms, then it's difficult for those people to get assistance.
And what impact do you think the digital divide has on businesses? Because one cannot help but think of the many restrictions on expansion plans for one.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to take agriculture, which is a big activity in rural areas. Some of the machinery that's used nowadays is connected to the network so that, the OEM can see how the machine is operating. We talk about AI, and, we know that drone cameras are also used to check the health of trees and crops. So all of these opportunities go a-begging when the communication is not there. And any other business that tries to operate out there has to be connected to the network. So it becomes impossible when there's no network available.
You've spoken to red tape, municipal challenges and administrative delays holding back the progress. In what form?
So I think most people don't understand that to have a tower, it has to be permitted. And it's quite a process. And if I may just highlight some of the key activities around permitting a tower. So it starts off with applying to the Civil Aviation Authority for permission for the tower at that particular location. And then you have to also go to the Department of Environmental Affairs to get permission to put up the tower in that location. And when that is done, you then have to go get permission from the local authority to change that activity at that particular area. So that talks to the zoning. And then finally, you go to back to the local authority, submit your building plan for the tower for that to then get passed. And that all of these activities could take a minimum of 6 months. And we've had experiences where it was 5 years later, we're still waiting for some of our permits to come through. So that has an impact on the activity of building the tower. And then lastly, Eskom. We need power at the tower. So we also then have to apply for a connection at that point. And it being rural, sometimes these locations are not close to the Eskom infrastructure, which then also means that it also takes time to get the power to where you need.
So with those challenges, what kind of collaboration is then needed with business and government departments?
Absolutely. We need to have better coordination amongst these government departments, both the provincial and local government. And we know that in rural areas, the reality is that these smaller municipalities are sometimes understaffed. There's staff shortages, so there aren't the people there to process these applications. So having visibility amongst the government departments on this key activity will help, so that, you know, the processes don't get held up extraordinary amount of time, because it delays all of the advantages of having communication brought to these communities.
Very well. And of course, just in wrapping up, I mean, with the red tape done away with and all these pressing challenges, what kind of development could we see in rural South Africa, and the contribution insofar as the economy is concerned, and you know, people who may be wanting to work from home and access the internet without using mobile data? How can this move change the face of rural South Africa?
Well, communication is an enabler. You know, we talk about road infrastructure, water, sanitation, but communication should be one of the priority infrastructures to get right, because without that, not much else can happen. You can't coordinate services into those areas. So it just brings a whole lot of potential and opportunities to these areas, and might even reverse some of the mass migration that people from rural areas move into urban areas seeking for economic opportunity. So if we create those opportunities in these rural spaces, we can keep people where they are and bring jobs and economic opportunities to where they are at.
Very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us this evening. Leaving that conversation there is Sean Shipalana from Moropa Solutions, talking there about some of the challenges when it comes to telecommunication services in rural South Africa.